In this segment, I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the curriculum that you're going to be working through in this TESOL program. This curriculum has been approved by TESOL Canada, and we're really happy to have you aboard with us and look forward to the learning adventure that we have in front of us. So to get you started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the first chapter. Chapter 1, of course, covers some very basic concepts to get you started. It gives you some background information and some essential information for teachers of English as a second language. And this chapter starts with some really helpful abbreviations and acronyms. And these are frequently used in TESOL courses, in TESOL curriculum, in lots of the texts that you'll be becoming familiar with. So they are very helpful, they're very useful to you, and help you to avoid writing out a lot of words and phrases over and over again. So we start on a really practical note here. And then, because as learning now is considered to be something that's done in a social context, and that we are all very social beings, we are going to look at the dynamics, the atmosphere, the relationships that we form in the classroom. And we want to get off to a great start in our classrooms with all the learners feeling very comfortable, very relaxed, knowing one another, having an idea of who we as their teachers are. So we start with something that we call icebreakers. And icebreakers are prompts that help learners to get to know one another, as I said. It also helps them to overcome shyness and to have some conversations in the classroom. Basically, what I can say about icebreakers is that they're a lot of fun. You're going to have a lot of fun with them. And then to help facilitate your learning and your practice and classroom activities, Part 3 of Chapter 1 it focuses on useful expressions for teachers in ESL. And after that, what we're going to look at is how English is a world language spoken by many, many, many people, as you know, in many parts of the world. But we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. It's interesting. Really interesting to know the kind of the demographics of English. It's spread around the world, and so we look at some statistics at this point, and we're going to have a discussion of English as an orthographic and logographic language. The next thing we're going to do is related to this topic of English as a world language. We're actually going to look at the growth of English as a world language. How does a language grow over time? How does it expand? How do there come to be many more speakers spread across different parts of the world? These are questions I find really interesting. I like to know about languages. They're our basic tool of communication. So we're going to see how English has spread through a process of colonization from Britain to other parts of the world, through governance, through developments in scholarly fields in both the humanities and the sciences. And also, though, you may not know, but languages also can spread through activities such as sports, the entertainment industry, and technology, developments in technology as well. Okay, so the next part of our discussion, again, I think is something interesting to sort of fill out our understanding of all the dynamics and the background, the history, and the uses of a language. So we take into consideration culture. Culture is intrinsically linked to language. And we know that we can't really it's not easy to pull these two things apart, in fact. Language is something that helps us from the beginning of our life to grasp and to be part of the culture that we're born into. And culture is also has its expression, one of the ways, the important ways of expression through language. So we think about what culture is. We think about definitions of culture at this stage. And the characteristics of culture. So we're going to get to have some interesting considerations of this at this point. But also we know that with culture can come cultural stereotyping and misunderstandings that arise from stereotyping. So we're going to look at that because that will play into our interactions with learners in the classroom and amongst learners in the classroom. And we want to frame all our learning in a really positive and dynamic context of diversity, cultural diversity. And cultural diversity is definitely part of Canadian society, where English is one of the languages that's spoken. So we want to think about diversity and the dynamics of an increasingly globalized world. So some really interesting topics, you can see that. And part of communication is that we want to think about when we're looking at intercultural communication is nonverbal communication. So not just the words that we use, but also gestures, facial expressions, how we use our eyes, right? And proximity, and all those kinds of fascinating factors in communication. So we'll have, I think, an interesting discussion of that topic and how it relates to language learning and language teaching as well. So at the end of this chapter, as with all the other chapters, you're going to have a task to do that completes that part of the chapter. And your learning activity that accompanies this chapter is going to ask you to summarize the material in the chapter and do that by providing some short answers to questions. And these answers will be based on some of the fact-based information that you've learned as well as your own experience. And I know the teachers at D&H College look forward to learning more about your experience. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the task 1 that accompanies this first chapter. Task 1 is really a summary of chapter 1. It helps you to think about, to go over this material in a way, because it is so fundamental and basic to the rest of your learning. It will actually help you to get a good grounding for the rest of the program. So for this task, you're going to start out with a list of questions. And for each question, we want you to actually answer the question with a short answer. For instance, the first question asks you, how many people in the world use English every day? And you don't have to write very much. If you can answer that question in one sentence, that's great. What is the most spoken native language in the world? You can answer that question too, probably in one sentence. The most you'll ever have to write is probably 3 sentences. So that's section 1, English as a world language. Now for the next section, section 2, the title for that section is Intercultural Awareness in TESOL. And for that one, you're going to create a definition for culture. Make a list of some aspects of culture. For example, the one that we all really enjoy a lot, food, right? But also maybe table etiquette. These are going to be short paragraphs that you're going to write based on your own experience and understanding of what culture is. And then the next question asks you this. In your experience as a student or teacher, have you experienced a misunderstanding or observed a misunderstanding due to cultural differences? So probably we all have observed such a misunderstanding. Think about one that you could talk about a little bit and about some of the factors that might lead to such a misunderstanding. So those might be those aspects of nonverbal communication that we talked about. In a short paragraph of maybe 4 to 5 sentences, just describe your observations and some of the factors that led to it. And so you can see what you're asked to do in this section is just to provide some short answers.